next week. It's crazy to think it's been 5 years ago since What Are We Doing became part of the American soccer lexicon. But let's turn it to the U.S. national team here. What are we doing with the system? Because I've heard a lot of talk about Gregg Berhalter's system. So how do we feel about his system now that we've seen it over the last 2 games?
I've had questions about the system from the beginning because no matter what, and this isn't technically a Gregg Berhalter issue, this is an issue in general. When you treat the national team like a club is treated where the system is bigger than the players because you can go out and buy the players that fit your system, your style of play. When you have a national team, that's not the case. The players that are within your national team that are in their prime, they dictate the system that you play. And what we've seen from Gregg Berhalter and his quote-unquote system on the road in CONCACAF World Cup qualifying and on the road in these kinds of games, they struggle. They do not score goals. They don't dominate possession. And I think Herc hit the nail on the head at the beginning of this. If you high press the U.S. team, they're actually worse than they are against the low blocks teams where they struggled in World Cup qualifying. So if you're Wales, if you're England, and especially if you're Iran, if you watch the Japan game, be compact, high press, this team is going to shoot themselves in the foot and they have no chance of creating anything. That's why I question the system, and I've always questioned the system for any national team that's trying to treat this as if the system is bigger than the group of players that are available.
Say it louder for the people in the back, Taylor. The players on the national team dictate the system. The pool dictates the system. What we're seeing right here is the inability, and Taylor, you've spoken it many times, the plan B, when you get punched in the face. So you can't do the system with Walker Zimmerman and Aaron Long. Players, center backs who you're asking them to come out cleanly with the ball and build out of the back, who necessarily don't do it week in and week out in a consistent basis like in New York and Nashville. That they don't do that. So don't ask them to that. Then you're going to put in a converted 9 to facilitate other people instead of putting in a 9 that you think is hot right now to score goals. No, you want to treat this system as if it's bigger than the players. And Taylor already said it. It's not.
Taylor?
Nope, and real quick, Herc, you know this better than anyone. The 2010 World Cup team changed. The trajectory of that team changed because Bob Bradley looked at it and said, you know what, I've got to play Clint Dempsey and Landon Donovan in positions where they're going to touch the ball more and they're going to be most effective, and that ended up being in wide areas for that team. That wasn't through the middle, so that's why the pool of players dictates what you do. And mind you, Herc, you and Seb talked about this on this program here. In World Cup qualifying, when the backs were against the wall, Gregg Berhalter switched it a little bit. They were a little bit more direct. They high pressed a little bit. They played into the profiles of their players. I think it behooves his staff to look at this in the 8 days before that Wales game where the entire group is together and say, I'm not so sure we need to try to do this philosophically the way we took over this job. I think it's in our best interest to play direct, to play active, and to play into the profiles of the center backs, the midfield, and most importantly, the front players. It wouldn't totally surprise me if he flips the script.
The biggest complaints about like the system for me have been how you're limited in player selection, right? Like how do you have a system that at the end of the day leaves guys like Jordan Pefok out or John Brooks or whoever the guy that you want to mention. I might throw another complaint here in about the system, and Taylor, I wonder if you'll remember this from like early days, 2019, Berhalter's taking over. I feel like there was some concerns that the complexities of his system would be a challenge in terms of communicating that to guys in an international break when you got 2 or 3 games and you got to
Williamson of Portland said it so himself.
And process all that stuff. I wonder if that's also an issue here, if maybe the complexity of the system, or better said, Berhalter's ability to explain it to the guys and then have them execute might also be a problem here when it comes to the system. Not just the fact that it eventually like limits the guys that you might actually call in.